when we're not utilizing our gifts, whether we're consciously aware of that or subconsciously, you got this unfulfillment inside of you. And so every day, regardless of how good the day was at work, like in regards to how much I was excelling and moving up the corporate ladder, I still had this unfulfillment.
Yo, Brian. All right, dude, let's get started here. I guess, dude, how did you get started in real estate investing in the first place?
Yeah, I got started back in 2006. I was a junior in college. A friend of mine who was 20 years my senior, he had been flipping houses, and I didn't really understand what all that meant. But he did give me an opportunity. At the time, they had this thing called stated income loans, and this was predominantly what caused the market crash in 2008. So what happened was people literally could fill out an application, state their income without any
Right.
verification, and the banks would give them money. And so the problem was his buyers still weren't financially savvy enough to even cover their down payment. So that's where I came in. So I leveraged a $6,000 or $7,000 refund check, covered their down payment to buy the house from him. And then when he sold it to them, he gave me a return on my investment. So I actually started out as like a de facto private lender while in college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways that a lot of people get into real estate these days. There's a lot of coaches out there. I know you are a coach. You help people invest in real estate and show them the right ways. Maybe it might be fix and flip. It might be wholesale. It might be, long-term investing. Talk about like some of your favorite ways that you like to, especially build your portfolio, and
Mhm.
then maybe some different ways that you might, based on someone's situation, recommend that they go.
Yeah, I think Uh, so my favorite by far is cash flow, right?
Right.
Because the more mailbox money you have, it sustains
Mhm.
your lifestyle. I think people have this, especially looking at social media today, have this idea that wealth is like I make millions of dollars. No, wealth is
Right.
the moment that you can figure out how to acquire enough assets to cover your liabilities. You're wealthy. That number could be $5,000 for some people,
Right.
right? It's when you can wake up and literally don't have to produce any active income. You're wealthy. So with that being said, cash flow is by far my favorite. However, over the last 16 years, there's been moments where fix and flip was more advantageous based on my lifestyle and my appetite.
Right.
Wholesaling has been more advantageous. But cash flow is always a good constant for any investor. That should be the ultimate goal. But there's some fun vehicles and creative ways that you can go and produce a lot of active income to, invest in other passion projects to just enhance your lifestyle. Many of our students love their government job
Hmm.
to where, they're making six figures. They're like, I just want to be able to travel more. I want to be able to pay for my kids'
Hmm.
college. And so, you can use active income strategy for those things. But then those that really want to come into our program and retire, as we've retired many before the age of 30, it's been because they've been able to go out and acquire cash flow properties.
Yeah. A lot of the listeners here, they grew up and their parents were, whether that's, Gen X or the boomers, they have this idea that, and it was instilled by their parents, where I know my parents did. You go to college, you get a job, you work there for a long time. It doesn't work like that anymore, with pensions and whatnot, and those don't really exist. But how did you like the thought of retiring by 30 years old or 30 when in your 30s is almost like that's not possible. Talk about how that happened
Yeah.
and what steps someone in their 20s or 30s can make to make that retire early happen.
Yeah. It's so much to unpack there. You know, as they say in the Bible, my baby leap when you were talking because I lived that life. Like I grew up on
Right.
that block.
Mhm.
Um, so I'll start at the end and then I'll reverse engineer. I remember
Sure.
the day when I finally left my job. The days prior, I called my dad and I told him that I was retiring from work. I was 34 at the time. And he told me, he said, I'm so glad you didn't listen to me. Right. So to go backwards to your point, getting out of college, went to work for an employer for about 12
Right.
years before I retired. My dad, I had gripes about working this job a couple years into it. And I remember having conversations with my dad and he'd tell me, listen, whatever you got to do, you need to do that because you need to work at this job for the next 30 years.
Right.
Set yourself up, right? Because he was a firefighter for 30 years. My mom was a cashier at a grocery store for 25
Yeah.
years. So they were blue collar people that their
Same.
only means of taking care and providing was to go and work this job. I
Correct.
knew since the age of 12, man, I kid you not, that I was going to be a money guy. God innately put that in my heart. And, I took a lot of different ways to get there, and some weren't so advantageous. But the point is I always knew that wasn't my lot in life. And so I still chartered the course of practicality of, I had a daughter at 18, so I've had responsibilities for much of, my life. And so I chartered the course of getting a job, but it was always with the intent of it being a means to an end. Right. And so it all starts, in my humble opinion, with intentionality. And if you only work a job for the purpose of a paycheck, then you've already failed. If you go to work with the intention of looking at processes, systems, looking at how is this employer able to afford to pay you and all these other people a salary, and yet you never see the owner. Like, if you can look at it from through that lens while you're there, you can start to extract some major pieces that will help you once you go into entrepreneurship to show you how to set up your business so that it could also be successful.
Yeah, having that curiosity while you're working that 9 to 5. What was it about that job that you had that you were like, I can't do this, or not can't do this, but like you were like, Dad, this may go against the grain here. What were some of those things that happened on like a daily basis where you're like, don't like this?
Well, you feel like you're in a box,
Hmm.
right? And it's see, God gave us all gifts. And so when we're not utilizing our gifts, whether we're consciously aware of that or subconsciously, you got this unfulfillment inside of you. And so every day,
100%.
regardless of how good the day was at work, like, and regardless of how much I was excelling and moving up the corporate ladder, I
Hmm.
still had this unfulfillment. And
Right.
so, once you're aware of that, it's hard to get up and feel good about that every day when you know there's a void, but you don't know how to fill it, right? And to your point, I love that word curiosity. Like, I got really curious about how do I fill this void, because coming in here to this job every day is not doing it for me,
Right.
and that coupled with all the other ancillary stuff, having to, you know, request time to go and get your teeth fixed,
You feel
or
like you're in a
Exactly.
box.
you
Exactly.
know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Right.
Like, I got to go
And
talk to somebody about the fact that I got a doctor's appointment,
it's
and
Yeah.
and
see,
maybe
God
even
gave
go
us
into
all
detail
gifts.
about it just because they look at me kind of cross-eyed. The fact that I need to
Hmm.
take, I mean, those types of things probably were my biggest impediments while I was there, as well
Sure.
as family time. Right, like I said, I've
Of
had a
course.
daughter since 18.
Mm.
And so, she's been a paid actress since 12. And then she also was a competitive dancer for
Okay.
8 years. So, like, not being able to attend all those events and things like that were pain points for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I was in, so when I got out of college, I worked for an advertising agency, right? Love what I do, got to do some creative work, love the people I worked with. But it was an 8 to 5 job, be there at 8 or 8:30 or whatever it was and get out at 5. I just happen to be someone who works really, really fast, and, whatever things I had to do, I would be done by like 1 o'clock, maybe noon sometimes. And it wasn't the fact that I would just sit there, but I just kind of got bored as well. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, if I can do this in like a couple hours or whatever, I just kind of got bored with it, and I would kind of mess around, and it wasn't very productive. And that's where I felt my lack of fulfillment as well.
Mhm.
What is it that, like, how do you define fulfillment for you? Like you said, I know you have a daughter, you have family, you want to do, you want freedom and all that stuff. There's a monetary component. What else like defines fulfillment for Brian?
Living my life on purpose, with purpose, to
Yeah.
really feel as though I'm doing those things that I've been put here on earth to do. You
How do you know
know,
what those are? Who tells you what that is?
I think that you discover it, right? Because
Sure.
they're already in you, through prayer and petition,
Mhm.
depending on people's belief systems. I'm a Christian man, so I believe in prayer. I think prayer is kind of mystical sometimes, when really for
Yeah.
me it's just a vehicle to get aligned with what God already planned and intended for your life. And so, he reveals that to you through a scripture. He reveals that to you through conversations with people. So who you surround yourself with is very important, because he will send messages through other people, that give you that enlightenment of the things that you've been praying about and trying to discover, right? And
Sure.
so I think that, you know, as I started to explore those things that felt natural to me, communication, serving people, teaching, right? And then, to your point, money is definitely not all of it. It's an
Mm,
important part of it, because
sure.
it just gives you the resources to do more of those things that you should already be doing, right?
Correct.
And so I found myself in this natural habitat of, well, I've been helping people indirectly my whole life, right?
Mhm.
And when I say indirectly, I mean not for compensation.
Right.
And so the natural progression into a mentorship program of teaching people how I've been able to build wealth through real estate, but also teaching them how I've done it. I can't negate the fact that it's been through my faith, right?
Yeah.
So now I've all of a sudden ended up in this marketplace ministry position where I'm teaching people practically how to use their faith, along with going out and making money, right? And so, you know, like, I don't have that unfulfillment anymore. I don't feel that thing. So it lets me know that I'm in alignment with those things that I should be doing in life.
Yeah, and you can just see the smiles on their faces when they start to live their life that they want to live. They have money, they become wealthy, and not just rich. They start to have the freedom that they want to have. Let's go back to young Brian. You mentioned at age 12, you said you had decided that you were going to be involved. You're financially free, all those kinds of things. Was there a moment in time, or was there something that happened at that point in time that you were like, "Hey, this is the point"?
I At 12, I made a decision. So taking that even a step back, I used to always be fixated with they weren't Legos, and I know you and me, we're kind of the same age, but they were like
Yeah.
these erector sets. It's not
Yes,
exactly that
the
either.
ones that you build, they're like metal pieces, and then
Correct, correct. And then
yes,
they also had like the plastic ones that you could build larger stuff with,
okay, yep.
right? And I used to always build like lemonade stands and set them up. And I grew up in
Ah,
the hood, you know what I'm saying? But for me, I saw this stuff on TV, and I'm like, okay, cool. So I could go and sell lemonade for like a quarter, 50 cent. So I became infatuated with making money probably at like 6 or 7 years old. And
yep.
then by the time I was 12, I got my first job sweeping up here in a barber shop.
Mm,
Uh, they paid me $25 a week for me to come to work 1 hour a day after school.
sweet.
And that was like the moment of clarity for me. I was like, yeah, I gotta go make my own money. And
Right.
so, I was eager at 14 to go work at the Boys and Girls Club. And then at 15, 16 to go work at a shoe store. And so I've always been in pursuit. And then I also figured out, even in the confines of that I wasn't, I was happy about making money, but I wasn't happy about how I was making money. And so,
Okay.
growing up in the inner city of Detroit, those people that were seemingly making the large amounts of money were like the street guys, the hustlers. And
Right.
so, I emulated that lifestyle in my late teen years, which landed me in some trouble. Before I graduated high school, it was a big
Mhm.
scare. I was at a 4 to 10 year felony. At that same time, it kind of led me to Christ at 18. And by his grace, I never had to go to prison or anything. I was able to get the thing completely expunged from my record, because of the age that I was at the time I
Sure.
encountered it, and that started me on this totally different trajectory, which is how real estate kind of was positioned in my path shortly after that. So
Do you feel like some of those setbacks were necessary, or do you think some of this was like almost this is how you were going to be no matter what, or maybe even like those things happened for a reason? How do you put this all together? Is it like, hey, Brian was going to be this no matter what, and these were just bumps in the road, or maybe these happened for a reason, or maybe they just happened and they were just not supposed to happen? How do you tie this all together into how
yeah,
you
I'm
became
a, I'm a
today?
firm believer that things don't happen to you; they happen for you.
Yeah,
So in order for me to become the man that I am today, I had to endure all of those moments, because they built character that I wouldn't have had I just had this streamlined path to the goal. Right. And, I took an Enneagram test. I scored 99 as an achiever and
Mhm.
96 as a challenger. So just with my wiring, God knows how to keep us balanced. If I have too much success without failure, I can almost start to trick myself into believing that I'm doing it instead of he's doing it. So he positions us to go through these challenges to where we have to identify and see his hand in our mess ups, which ends up, perpetuating us into a better setting thereafter.
Right.
No, this was good stuff, man. I like the impromptu approach. I like the
Yeah.
candidacy.
Yeah. I just like to
Um,
chat it out.
yeah, man.